Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you might be. Today, we've got another Clarion member, Brandon Fancher, on to give us an EdenOS update. These are a bi-weekly series that Brandon does, and I'm sure he's got some exciting developments to share with us all. And this is, of course, live, so throw some questions in the comments section, and I'll be sure to get those to Brandon. As difficult as they might be, he's a smart guy. He'll answer them. Brandon, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's good to see you this morning, Chris. Thanks for helping host this every week. Me and Mike alternating.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll dive right in. Let me share my screen here.
You're always prepared with a nice presentation. Got some people in the chat. Good morning, Eddie, Jeremy Robinson. Thanks for being here.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us.
There we go.
Awesome. All right, so this is the EdenOS development update. So as you guys may know, we hold this call at 10:15 U.S. Eastern Time weekly, and I'm here every other week, and then alternating is Mike Manfredi. Also from the Clarion team. And my week is just all about updating you guys on where we stand with EdenOS, how the development efforts are going, what our progress has been the last couple of weeks, etc. So without further ado here, yeah, I just went over my first slide, right? Roadmap updates, and of course, answering any questions. The disclaimer that I always put in here is just that we're talking about roadmap. We're talking about things that we're working on, things that we are projecting into the future. And as with any projection, that's just what it is. It's a projection. Right now, we see in part and we know in part. And so we talk about timelines. Those are subject to change. We talk about different features and the roadmap itself, and all of those things are subject to change as we go through this. So just understand that. But everything we're presenting here is we are prioritizing transparency, immediate transparency, over trying to get the future perfect, if that makes any sense.
Perfect. Yeah,
so with that said,
makes sense. It's a nice approach. I think the people in the community will appreciate that.
Cool. So before we start and dive in, we like to share some resources. So if you haven't been to EdenOS.org, please do so. You're going to learn a lot about EdenOS and more widely what Eden is, and this new idea of true democracy, of fractal governance that came out of Dan Larimer's book. You'll even see a link to Dan Larimer's book on that page, More Equal Animals. If you have not read that, that's the place to start right there. Get the book, read it again, buy a few, hand them out to friends. I think after you read it once, you're going to want to hand it out to friends. It makes a whole lot of sense. That's what Eden is based on, and that's what EdenOS on EOS, right, is about. We do have a public Eden wiki. Anybody can go to wiki.eoscommunity.org and see more immediate information there, announcements, even some insights into our development efforts throughout the week. Although I'll admit, the last 2 weeks we've been so heads down with the work that we haven't been doing as good of a job as normal updating our development boards in our wiki, or as you'll see in our GitHub there. We do have several issues in EOS community, github.com/eoscommunity.eden. That is the open source repo where we're doing all of our development on EdenOS out in the open. We have some issues. We have a project board there that takes those issues and turns them into kind of a backlog, a to-do, doing, done kind of thing. You can take a look at that. But again, like I said, right now, we've been so heads down with developing, which is a really good thing, that it's lagging a little bit. It doesn't necessarily, right now at least, show exactly the progress that we've made. We've made a lot of progress in the last few weeks. Anything you'd add to the resources, Chris? There are Telegram
No,
channels. And
I think that makes sense. Yeah, that'll get you to the start. And I just should say with Dan's book, there's a really great foreword from Mike Maloney. So a lot of folks out there are Mike Maloney fans, and he wrote an excellent foreword. So if you do get the book, enjoy that foreword. Little plug.
Nice.
Dan's book.
Yeah, it's good. All right, so let's review the roadmap. We do this every 2 weeks, and this, if you've been with us before, this graphic will be a familiar one, right? So V01. But let me start with where we are. We're here in the green dot. Okay. V01 behind us was all about community formation, bootstrapping invitations, and the member portal, and even some NFTs. And the community is growing. I think we're at, gosh, I'll have to check to get the latest stats. If I look at the Genesis.Eden homepage, we're at 154 active members with 9 outstanding invitations. So the community is forming, and now is the time to get involved if you haven't, and to be a part of that. We went on to member induction enhancements over here, and we've gone past that, and now we're at V02, which is all about elections and funding. So we are quickly converging on being able to run elections and to fund the community, all executed on-chain, automated through EdenOS to the extent possible. That's what we're working on now. If you guys have been a part of the last trial elections, you guys will be familiar with how those elections operate. And EdenOS is all about just automating as much of that, regularly scheduled elections, things like that. And that reminds me, hold on, let me pull up my my wiki, because there's something I'm supposed to share here today. I don't want to miss it. Oh, yes. So there's an announcement about the trial elections. And that announcement is just that the budgets that Dan had allocated for all of the delegates that came out of the elections and the voting and all of that, those budgets have been paid. I believe those were paid a few days ago. So I just want to let the community know that that has been taken care of. That's done.
Check your balance, delegate winners.
Yes.
Got some extra EOS in there. Now the pressure's on. How are you going to spend it?
All eyes are on you now.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're focusing on V02 here in the middle. V03, enhanced elections and accounting, is coming soon. That's going to give us better visibility into past election results and just all around enhancements around elections, accounting, and more. Right now, we're just trying to get the elections going. Okay. So we'll move on to the next slide. What are we working on right now in V02? And when, right? When Moon, when Lambo, is that the right terminology in our community now? When elections, when Eden. Summer 2021, okay. We announced that 2 weeks ago, and there's nothing has changed to indicate that we need to push that out any farther. We are still committed to delivering on at least the EdenOS software that can facilitate the elections, delivering on the software before end of summer 2021. Now, when our first elections...
I was going to say it's North American summer, not South American, just to be accurate.
Thank you. Yes, yes. So winter 2021 for all of you in the Southern Hemisphere.
The Southern Hemisphere, yeah.
Let's rephrase it. Before the end of this season. I'll update the slide for next time. Yeah, summer 2021, Northern Hemisphere people. And yeah, again, right, we get the EdenOS software out there, and it has the ability to run elections. I think we're going to try to get a real election run on chain via EdenOS done before end of this summer in Northern Hemisphere as well. But that's yet to be scheduled. Okay. Now, What's in here?
Probably a try, like a test. Do you guys? Because I know the last fireside we had with Dan about 2 weeks ago now, he was anticipating sometime in September. He thought we might have the first official election. Does that mean we'll maybe want to have a little quick test? Probably before that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
We'll be testing this out in our test net setup that we have now for sure. And after we do that internally, then we will likely need to recruit a sizable crowd of people to help us test that out. Probably still on testnet there, but to test all of that out to ensure everything's running smoothly. As for whether our first run through on mainnet will be a test or will be the real thing, I think the jury's out on that. We might feel good enough about our tests on the testnet that we can go ahead and do a real election on mainnet.
Awesome. Yeah, so stay tuned, folks who are listening, that I'm sure that at some point there'll be an announcement just to help. There'll be no funding and any of that jazz, right? It'll be just a run through the process. So
yeah, I think absolutely. That's all about learning, right? It's all about finding where, if anywhere, are things breaking down. And so we'll keep the pressure low. Yeah, probably not funding if we're doing testnet testing and pulling people into that. But yeah. So what are we building right now? What are we delivering this summer 2021 here? We're going to have, the software is going to have a regularly scheduled 6-month election. Election RSVP, actually, we're scratching out RSVP. We'll talk about that change, but it's election opt-in. So if you're a part of the community and you're in good standing, right, you can opt in to be a part of the upcoming election. We will have randomized grouping using entropy from Bitcoin hashes or blocks that will feed into the system, just to ensure that nobody knows how the groups are going to be split up ahead of time. Because if you know ahead of time how groups are split up, that gives you the ability before the elections start to try to manipulate things, right? So randomized grouping, Zoom links, okay? So we want to try to set this up so the system gives you a preferable for your group. Once you're divided up into a group for a round in the election, gives you a Zoom link that everybody should use. And then we have voting and video upload. So as the round is going on, you can vote, you can change your vote, you can change your vote, you can see how close you are to consensus. And then once the time runs out, right, the votes will be tallied and that consensus, if any, will be logged. And then we are simplifying funding for this. And when I say funding, I'm talking about, we'll get there. And see your representatives. So during the election, you'll be able to see in past rounds, if you've moved up to the rounds, you know, who won that round, and in future rounds in your lineage to the this, for lack of a better term, Satoshi, or what we're toying with the idea of like head chief delegate. Yeah, so you'll be able to see during the election your delegation, and then after an election has happened, you'll be able to see your delegation as well up until the next election.
Very cool.
So progress. This slide again looks familiar. I've highlighted a few changes here. So most election actions in the smart contract are complete. Check, right? Nothing has changed there. We've made some tweaks, but still, the state is that is in a very good workable state. Our UI designs are now stable. So I think I had in here before, they were in progress, and we've had a lot of maturity now in our UI designs, very stable. Thirdly, building out shared UI components in the front end now. So that was in here before, but we've made a lot of progress on that, so that's ongoing. We are now actively working on connecting our front-end UI components that we've implemented to the contract APIs and the data fixtures that we have there. So that's a new item that we've inserted here that we're actively working on. And we've successfully tested our light Zoom API integration for meeting links. We are actively working on the ability to encrypt and share those meeting links. We have the encryption working now. We're just exposing that in the UI. And we're still investigating, will this release have inline WebRTC chat for election participants in EdenOS? That's something we'd really like to see. That might be a V03. But if we can deliver on that stretch goal, we will. Any thoughts or questions before we move on, Chris, on this?
Excellent progress. That's my thought. You guys are, yeah, great to see.
Cool. It's hard because, right, we are in a body of work now that takes us, I think, more than 2 weeks to, it takes us more than 2 weeks to build up the UI and to hook it up, right? Those take us a few weeks. And so I'm going to give you a sneak peek. We'll do a little bit of a demo for a partially connected UI, just because, hey, transparency, right?
Yeah.
But I think that here in a couple more weeks, we'll have a lot more to show.
And I guess it's probably worth mentioning to people in terms of the Zoom integration. We talked about this last call, but we're not married to Zoom forever. This is just a stopgap for now. We're going to use Zoom with the end goal of being as independent from any of these third-party softwares as possible.
That's right. Yeah, that's an important point. And in fact, we're not even going to be married to Zoom in this V02 release. Zoom, you can look at the Zoom integration as a way to provide you a Zoom link that everybody should use. But if for some reason one person can't get the Zoom link isn't working, or your round gets on Telegram and says, hey, we don't want to use Zoom for some reason, as long as you all can connect, have a meeting, and record it, and upload that recording to prove that you were there and there was consensus, that's what matters. And even in V02, in what we're delivering, you're going to have the ability to fall back in various ways. So we are not exclusively dependent on that Zoom integration, just to drive that point home a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. So what has changed about what we're implementing in our higher level design in the last 2 weeks? Before, we were talking about this idea of a 2 EOS election fee. And I think it wasn't even clear among our team, was that 2 EOS that was going to be charged when you opt in to participate? What about the people that opt out? Are they charged the 2 EOS? What kind of impact does that have on the incentive to participate? What about the people that don't opt in or opt out, right? They never RSVP for the election, they take no action. And then you start to ask, well, so what are the consequences for maybe not opting out because you don't want to pay 2 EOS? And then we're starting to think, wow, there's a lot hanging on this 2 EOS when people have already paid annual dues to be in the community. And hopefully, right, we are all doing our job as a community to bring people in who really care about coming to consensus. That's why they're in this in the first place. And so this added election fee, we talked about it. We thought it feels like a little bit of a distraction, maybe even a pre-optimization. Let's see how elections go before we start to layer on the added complexity. And so what we've done is we have since struck election fees. Your fees are covered by your annual membership dues. After the first election, and we have a board and a delegation in place, we may decide that we want to change the dues, the fee structure, the annual fee structure to cover added fees for the elections or whatnot. The idea, though, is that it's better for us to keep it simple now. And that gives us the flexibility to react to and respond to the actual learnings from actual elections. There's nothing like actually doing something for you to learn what needs to change or be tweaked or be modified or be improved, right? I've said this before, but There's nothing like pain to inform your priorities. And we can try to guess what our pain is going to be when you go, you're deciding to run a marathon or whatever, and what's going to hurt. But you don't actually know until you do it. So let's keep it simple.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And then annual fees, I didn't quite realize that. So there is a sign up fee. When you first join, you pay 10 EOS, but then on top of that, there will be an annual fee.
Yeah, so your dues so when you sign up,
annual dues, yeah,
10 EOS, those are actual annual dues, right? And we don't yet have a mechanism in place to collect annual dues, but we're going to implement that. Actually, it's probably going to be dependent on elections. Elections are every 6 months.
Yeah.
Whenever we'll see. But fact is, our community hasn't been in place for a year yet, so we'll get the annual due system set up before it's been a year.
Right, but bottom line, I think this is a very good move to there was a lot of friction, discussion anyway within the community, those in and outside of Eden who are, it was 2 EOS or 10 EOS, and what happens if EOS is $100? Like, this could be quite pricey, and then so it's supposed to be 3 hours minimum wage. Well, then how do you scale that? It seems so. This is just get rid of it altogether. That answers the problem.
La simplicità. The second thing that has changed is, and I alluded to this earlier, but we were saying, hey, even if you don't plan to participate, let us know if you're going to be there or not. And in fact, we were toying with the idea of if you don't speak up, right, when an election is coming, then how do we know that you're engaged? But again, it was opening up a lot of edge cases, and we just want to keep it simple. So opt in by declaring your intent to participate.
Yeah.
And if something changes, my boy is knocking on my window out my door. He's waving at me.
You better wave back.
Yeah, I did. He wasn't going to let me get away with it. He was going to keep knocking.
Those of you guys can wait.
That's right. That's right. This is what's really important. Yeah.
Of course.
This is why we're doing all this, right? Make the world a better place. So if something changes and you've opted in, you can opt back out. And in fact, we ask that you opt back out, because what happens is whoever's opted in, that becomes the group, right before the election, that gets divided up into all of the rounds for round one, right? Everybody gets divided up into groups of between 4 and 6 people. And it would be a big problem if you opted in but didn't show up, right? Because 2/3 plus 1 of the people in your round are how you come to consensus. No shows start messing up that consensus. So right now it's opt in. You declare your intent to participate. Opt out if something changes. No action required if you know you can't make it. And that really does lead into the next item here. We don't want a fragile system, and we don't want someone who doesn't show up to screw up consensus for your group. And we can really see that becoming a problem. And so we decided to reword it a little bit here. A no-show, a no vote, right? And the only way we really know that you showed up is that number one, you appeared on camera, but we are asking everybody to vote in that first round so that there's on-chain evidence, right? But a no-show or a no vote counts as a vote for the remaining consensus that's there. What does that mean? Okay. One way to phrase that is we are going to calculate consensus based on over two thirds of the votes cast. If you have a group of 5 people and 4 people vote, let's change. Let's say you have a group of 5 people and God forbid 3 people don't show up. Okay, so you've only got 2 voters there. Well, if they both vote for themselves, right, you don't have consensus. That's 50-50. If they both vote for one of the 2 people, then you have 2 out of 5 of the participants, which in the old model means you've only got 40%. But what we'll do is we'll calculate the consensus based on the two votes. So you have 100% there, and the remaining votes are going to count as votes for the remaining consensus. Okay, so the show goes on.
Yeah.
And we felt like that's compatible with the spirit of what we're doing here in Eden. But yeah, a no vote counts as a vote for the remaining consensus. So if not a fee, Lovejoy's piping in, are there any ways to disincentivize no-shows? Well, that's really kind of where we started. We started talking about incentives, and I asked the question, so are people who RSVP no going to pay the 2 EOS? And we thought, yeah, well, it's a per election fee and we want everybody engaged. Well, then the next question is, why not just not RSVP, so you don't have to pay the 2 EOS election fee?
I never saw
you have an incentive to not pay it, right?
Yeah.
Well, what are we going to do with those people? And then we started thinking, well, what are the consequences for not RSVPing?
You just have to kick
Do people get an automatic kick, right? Kick them out, right? They missed it, or something happened and they weren't able to. Do we do that after 3 elections? Do we do that after? And you start to get into this kind of weird penal spiral, right?
Yeah.
Where you start to think about penalties, and then we were like, well, what if people have a debt account? But then is that compatible with it? It just led to so many weird questions. And initially, we would like to focus on, right, let's see what the quality of the community is here. Let's see, are we bringing the right people in? It's going to be abundantly clear after an election and after multiple elections too, who's in this to participate and who's not. And you know what? Maybe it's okay to be in it to fund the community.
Yeah.
Right? Annual dues, you're paying your dues. Mm-hmm. You're in good standing. I mean, these are things that we as a community are going to have to grapple with over the coming months, right? After we've run our elections, and it's better, I think, to grapple with those ideas with more engagement and with a real delegation in place.
This is very smart. Especially the idea when you think of the incentives to join. Currently, there aren't a ton, but as Eden develops and builds out, has funding, products get built, and more awareness comes to this, there might be a lot of products and services on EOS that choose to leverage Eden members and give them special perks and bonuses for their particular product or service based on Eden accounts. So maybe you join Eden just to be a part of that perk system, as opposed to even necessarily wanting to vote in an election. So this is it's great to add that flexibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. And look, again, the less we build now, the less you have to undo later when you find out what the real pain points are. Now, can you flash Brandon's, let's go back to his last question and then come back to this one, because I want to answer that in a different light. So if not a fee, are there any ways to disincentivize no-shows? If 2 EOS is enough to sway you either way, to change your behavior with regard to an upcoming election, are you in it for the right reason to begin with? Are you the kind of person that we want in the community? That's another thing. We kept on throwing around this 2 EOS talking about incentives over 2 EOS. What the heck?
Right.
Right. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, how are people going to respond to 2 EOS? Well, is coming to consensus as a community worth less than 2 EOS to you? What is it worth to you? Yeah. And so that's why just every time we talked about it, it's like, oh, something doesn't feel right here. I know that for me, just the ability to come to consensus like this and on chain in an semi-automated way, right, is worth a whole lot. And I hope it is to everybody that's participating in our community. Now let's check out his next question there.
Right.
Does it then make sense to reward those who follow through on their RSVP? I think, I mean, we're definitely open-minded to that, but what's the reward? And does that reward have to be worth more to someone than coming to consensus as a community? And if so, is that reward 2 EOS? Is it 10 EOS? Is it the return of their annual dues? How is the community funded? And again, then look, you're putting a price on, like you find the sweet spot, well, you're putting a price on coming to consensus, right? Incentivizing people to come to consensus. And again, it just feels so like, look, I don't know the answer yet, to be honest. We don't know the answer yet. It absolutely, okay, so yes, could be social, not monetary. I think that part of it is the ability to come to consensus is a reward in and of itself, but maybe there's a hall of shame. Maybe there's it becomes clear, you know, these people participated, these people didn't. There certainly are social implications to your participation or your lack thereof. And I think that might be a key here.
And it could come later. Sure. Yeah, and it could be like when I mentioned this, where products and services built on EOS could leverage or choose to incentivize Eden members based on their participation. And maybe another layer to that participation is, do they even participate in an election? Maybe something, maybe special NFTs come up that someone chooses to give those who participate, you get an NFT. The idea of shaming, I don't think that's a negative way to look at it. It's more the fact that because you don't have to opt out anymore, you either opt, so RSVPing is just whether you're going to go, but you don't RSVP negative. So even that, I think, you know, you could be a family vacation or something, you're going to get penalized because you didn't comment on that, and then somehow that's held against you. So I like it seems to me this is a good way. And the incentive is you get to participate in this process. Like, this is fun. Like, this is enjoyable. Your voice gets to be heard. Like, it's this whole idea of a new form of democracy, right? A true democracy. And you get to delegate your opinions to other people to then carry it forward and to, you know, I think there's more to it than just some sort of monetary incentive or basic incentive we're used to. Yeah, absolutely. And then Lovejoy put on there, NFTs. Yeah, NFTs are like a limited edition NFT. I think that's a great idea, and it's certainly something that, in fact, it's in our V03 election enhancements milestone that comes up next. Can I pay in pounds? I don't like spending my EOS. That a boy. That's the spirit. That's the spirit we like. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Obviously, you need a member, a dedicated Eden member, Mel Pierce. Yep, here he is. This is cream of the crop here. This is great. All right. So V03 NFTs, we are looking at having some cool NFT ideas there. Right now, we're kind of, well, we'll talk about that. Let me say one thing before we get, there was a question came up earlier from Jeremy Robinson, and he had a question about when the voting takes place, and he's available on weekends, and, you know, during the week, not as available. So how the actual elections are carried forward in terms of timing isn't set in stone yet, Jeremy. As of now, the 2 trial elections were sort of marathons of sorts that occurred on a single day. And if you were looking to move forward, you had to be there for 4-ish hours. I mean, I've been to the final both times, and it was like 4+ hours. So that can be a problem. During the chat that came that we had with Dan after that election, we brought this up because some community members had mentioned the fact, well, can we have like maybe a few days or even a week between rounds so you can have a chance to digest who's moving on, and if you're moving on, you get to do some research about what you're going to see in the next round and help to be more informed, and you spend less time maybe discussing the details of a proposal because you've already researched it. And Dan was open to that idea. So it is possible. We don't know yet how that's going to play out, but it is possible that the rounds themselves could be spread out over days or even a week apart. We don't know. So I can give a little bit of clarity to part of that, okay? We're going to ask everybody, no matter where they're at in the world, to wake up at 2 a.m. No, not true. No, the good news, and what you said is key there on a Saturday or Sunday. We've actually coded the contract. When you set up the community or configure elections, right, as a community, we've set it up so that we get to tell it, schedule the next one 6 months in advance on this day of the week at this time.
so that we can make sure that these fall on weekends, right?
Awesome. And that's a lot of notice. If you're planning the next election 6 months away, that certainly allows room to, if you really are dedicated and want to participate, you can put it on your calendar.
That's V02. Yeah, that's right. And that's V02 it's the way it works. An election gets scheduled, and then immediately after the end of the election, immediately after the election ends, you see the date for the next election, the date and time. And so, yeah, you're going to have 6 months notice to be able to plan and try to move things around and try to be there for sure. Now, right now, we do still do the rounds back to back. If you come in and you don't want to climb the delegation ladder, you don't have to, and you're looking at a couple of hours, right, to participate in that first round, which is very meaningful because it sets the tone, for all the rest of the rounds, right?
It's your chance to be heard. So for those who don't necessarily want to move forward, but you want to have a platform and an opportunity to have your voice expressed, unlike any modern form of democracy, that's your chance. You just show up for that first round, hour and a half. It's only 50 minutes anyway. So, some prep time just to get everybody organized, but it's not a big commitment, and you have a chance to have the floor. And those who move on, I've moved on every time. I've watched every single round to hear what people said. So if I actually had a position of substantial funding and ability to have a lot more influence, since it's just a mock trial thing for now, your voice would count for me personally, because I'd be listening and hearing what you had to say. So, I hope that future delegates who move forward do a similar thing and go through and listen to what the people said, who took the time to at least participate in that first hour. And it's meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I just had a thought and then I lost it.
Oh, I rambled.
Oh, no. It was so good what you were saying. I got lost in it, Chris. It was really good. I started thinking about, man, Chris is a benevolent Satoshi. No, but it's true. Oh, yeah, that's what it was going to be. Is the other part of it is whenever you participate in a group, you now have a direct delegate, and that delegate may go on to the next group or the next group or the next group. But whenever you log in between elections and you participated, you're going to be able to see who your direct delegate is. And an idea I've been kind of thinking about and toying around with is, if you need something done in the Eden community that you're in, or you have questions, I think that the first person you should reach out to should be your delegate. I mean, they are in the position they are in because of you, and they represent you, and they've been funded, right, because of you. And so it does give you kind of an ear to look. I could try to get my representative here on the phone in South Carolina where I'm at, but I probably am going to have a hard time doing that. You're probably going to have a really easy time as like one of 5 or 6 people to get the ear of your representative, your delegate in Eden, in this community, which is exactly what it's about. It's about balancing the power between the individual and those who represent the individuals, right? What a beautiful balance of power.
Yeah.
Call them up, hit them up on Telegram. If you don't participate in that first round, then you're not going to have a direct delegate. You're still going to be represented because you're a part of the community and you have contributed to the consensus of the community by not participating even. But the people the first people you see on your delegates page are probably going to be the head chiefs initially, not the head chiefs, but the chief delegates, the board, right? What we've been calling the board.
Yeah.
And they represent a lot more people.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's true.
Participate.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's participating. Also, you get to know people a little bit, right? You're a 50-minute conversation you're forced to have. How often in a community now, digital or otherwise, are we actually sitting for 50 minutes and talking? Like this is the whole social side of this to me is I find it quite awesome because I don't know. I mean, community, the definition of community is a little lack in the modern world. So this is an attempt to kind of bring it back, revive it.
Yeah, you could be randomized into a group with Dan Larimer, with gosh, even Chris Barnes,
Oh,
maybe
the
a
odds.
maybe a
What are the
Brandon
chances?
Lovejoy. Yeah,
Come on now.
yeah.
Oh, Brandon
You could
Fancher.
be.
Let's be real here.
Yeah, you could be randomized in a group with like that's my actual favorite part about the elections. Okay, it doesn't matter who I get randomized into a group with. I start talking to people I've never talked to in the community, hearing the ideas that are out there, and I walk out of it. That's what I remember. That's what I love about it. And that's the feedback that we've gotten from the trial elections too, is everybody went in thinking, oh, this is going to be a big drain of time, but it's worth it because we're going to get to consensus. And everybody came out thinking, that was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the next one. I have relationship now with I've learned things that I never thought I'd learned. So that's true.
Yeah.
All right. What's next? Okay. So after summer/winter 2021, what's next? Summer/winter, that's a previous joke we had if you're just tuning in. Winter in the southern hemisphere, summer in the northern hemisphere. I don't want people to be like, well, that guy's really not committal.
They're not being transparent. They're being ambiguous.
V03 enhanced elections. This is our next milestone, right? So where are we going? The ability, number one, to schedule elections early. Community grows over 10%. And it'll schedule an election a month from now, move the election up, basically. The head chief delegate.
Is that 10% thing still going to be there from the very beginning? Because if we're only at, say, 200 people or something, that'll be some frequent elections.
Yeah, I think we'll reassess it before we go to implement it. I think that there's a floor before it kicks in.
Okay.
It might be, for a community that is over 1,000 people large or something like that. But we'll see.
Right. Scale.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's part of that knowing in part and seeing in part, right? Things do change because when you start to really think about them and question them and start to implement them, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
But there are other reasons that elections can be moved up early too. So if a head chief delegate, what we've been calling the Satoshi, resigns, there could be early elections. If there's a vote of no confidence, right? Assuming that we have that in place, that ability in place, early elections, things like that. We've not yet implemented, we were talking about this, annual dues collections. That's a V03 thing.
Mm-hmm.
Election NFTs, we were just talking about NFTs. Do you get a special NFT for participating? This one I'm really excited about, detailed accounting of community, representative, and individual member funds. I think what we're going to see, and this is our goal, okay, we're trying to practice this now through updates like this and really giving you an eye into how things are, visibility into how things are being done at the moment and how things are changing, okay? Mm-hmm. But it's all about transparency, accountability. This is the power of blockchain, honestly, that you can engineer integrity by design. Well, the movement of funds throughout the community, all of it's going to be laid bare, hopefully beautifully and easily for people to see. So that's.
Is there going to be a bit of a UI to help us? Like, I know now you can still see stuff by going to blocks, but it's not easy. You don't see a nice little visual tree of everything. Is that coming?
Yeah. Now, when you say visual tree, are you talking about visual tree to see representation?
Both. Could be fund allocation going from, here's the guy and here's the accounts it went to, and you can just maybe so many layers, not too crazy, but just a little bit to help visualize it.
So going back to this graphic here, you see we're in V02, which is elections and funding, organized and executed on chain via EdenOS. One way to phrase this is our elections MVP. It is a viable product, but it is a minimal viable product. V03, better visibility into past election results, accounting, and more. And so going back to this slide here, we expound on that a little bit to be more concrete, to more concretely address your question. With V02, the visibility into an ongoing and a past election in our UI will be less robust than we envision it becoming. In other words, if you are participating in an election, you'll be able to clearly see in our UI election results for any round that you are in, and assuming that there's consensus, any round that your delegates are participating in until the end. But once that election is done, some of that information, it's logged on the blockchain in the block log, but it's not stored in state. And so we aren't going to be able to easily query it initially. Now, after the election's done, you will be able to see again your delegation. But your delegation is different than the whole delegation, fractal delegation tree, okay? I don't think that initially we're gonna have a view into the entire fractal delegation tree. Just like while you're participating in an election, in our UI, you won't initially have a view into what's going on around you. Now, we've got a few ways that we work around that. And we're looking at, in our MVP, they always say, if you're not, I don't remember who said this quote, if you're not embarrassed by your first release, then you're doing it wrong, okay? But we're going to fall back to manual communication for some of those wider views into everything that's going on. So we envision, and we have a nod to this in our UI currently, that as an election is going on, there's going to be a Zoom community room. So you'll have a room that you can enter into for your group, just the people who are participating in your group in that round. But there's going to be an open, unencrypted Zoom link, okay, that anybody and anybody and their mother can join to listen in to what's going on more widely. And so what we're talking about right now is this room would be more of a panel style Zoom call where you have a group of people who can MC, and people can raise their hand, but not everybody's going to have permission to speak. They can raise their hand. I don't know if you've ever been a part of a Zoom call like that, right? You raise your hand, you're given permission to speak, and maybe you ask a question about the round you were just in, or you want to just say something constructive, right, to the group. You don't even have to be a participant of the election. This is a great way for people to, on the outside, to learn about how elections happen and how they're going, right? And so you can have those MCs talking about, oh, we're getting election results from, this group and that group, and maybe you expose do a screen share for a Google slide deck or some sort of other representation of, a leaderboard, right, all across. But at least you have a fallback for a manual view into how the election is going. It's like sitting in the stands. But you have you're in the nosebleed section. You can't really see what's going on, but you have the announcers. Maybe you're tuning into the radio station where the announcer, I don't know.
The ambiance is still impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And nice box seats, I guess, kind of air conditioning. Sorry with my analogies, guys. So we are thinking about those things. And then V03 is where we really try to tackle bringing that visibility into our UI more widely. And that's going to depend on, the reality TV component. Yeah, I think there should be a reality TV component, and a great way, right? We get thousands of people in on that call.
It's possible.
And see it happen live. I don't know,
Yeah. Well, it was like the last trial election where the last round of deliberations, we left it open and people just sat in and listened to the discussion. And I think those who were listening really kind of liked it. It felt, I think they enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's neat. More visibility. I forgot again where I was going there, but more visibility. It's coming. And I was saying that state history solution. So you guys, I think last week, got to get a demo from Todd Fleming, Todd and Mike. And that is, I think, what's really going to enable for us in a distributed fashion without having to build a whole bunch of infrastructure, the ability for us to provide these enhanced views into what's going on.
Yeah.
And that source of truth being built up right there in your browser. It's really cool.
Exactly.
And that's, I think, coming sooner than we all think.
Pretty exciting.
All right. And then, yeah, transfer funds internally and possibly incentives, right, to keep funds inside the community and to build up the Eden community that you're a part of. Before we go on, anything else there? Any questions?
No, we've got, we got Malenkio joined. When will this meeting setup first be tested? Just joined the call. And so, yeah, next few weeks, I imagine the first kind of test of this automated part, right? If we're going to be,
yeah, I think so.
September.
Yeah. What we'll do is we'll first run several tests, of course, internally with our team on our test net, and then we'll slowly start widening that to more and more participants to test it at greater and greater scales. And I anticipate that happening, end of August would be my guess there. So yeah, please stay tuned because we're going to need volunteers for sure to help us in that.
Right on. And one last comment here: reality TV makes Eden sound staged. Indeed, the term has been double thinked on that one, right? It's no longer reality.
True.
Or double speak, I guess.
Yeah. Good. Well, let me just give you, look, this isn't even fully hooked up. So I'm going to show you guys anyway, okay? Just a little bit of what we're doing. Maybe it'll inspire a little bit, but let's actually take this into our mobile view here. So this is real UI. Not all of it is hooked up yet, but you can see here how we're in an election, right? And there's a community room up here. You could join the community meeting if you wanted to. And you're in round 2. Round 2 is ongoing. And I should have set up my little timer. There's a really cool timer graphic. Heck, it's not like I have a whole audience waiting on me. Hold on one second here.
Show us what you need to show us, Brandon. This is all pretty awesome. And a timer is exceptionally handy because that always comes up, right? How much time do we have left?
Yeah.
What do we?
Yeah, it does. I think someone brought it up last call, actually, that we were on. Mm-hmm. All right, so real quick, what time is it UTC right now? It is August 3rd, and at UTC, it is 6 hours ahead of, let's just do
now
17, and not 27, 17. Let's see what happens.
Let's bring up the timer.
Look at that. Oh, but I'm too far out. Hold on, 17, 20.
You can see the vote timer. I saw it there.
Yeah, but it's cooler than that. I mean, it's working.
Yeah,
like I said, some of the UI is mocked out. Yeah, it's a better time. 18, 20.
This is quite close then. This is awesome. And it's nice that it's set up for mobile because that's personally the only place where my wallet is working properly. So good.
Yeah, we're doing mobile first here.
Lenny's on 1510 UTC right now. Thank you, Lenny.
1510.
That's what it currently is, yeah. Plus
thank you.
Plus 4 hours to our Eastern time zone. So the timer's updating. It works.
I'm adjusting. There we go. I'm adjusting our fixtures here because we've mocked out some of the data and connecting it to that before we get into connecting it to the smart contract and having to set up the contract in various states. But yeah, you can see like you've got a vote timer. Yeah. You got a vote timer there for your round, and we can come back here and we can see that in round one, it looks like Egeon the Great won that round, right? He's got his nice little star icon. He is the delegate elect.
As he should, and humble, no less.
Yes. Yeah.
Humility always wins.
Right, and he's uploaded a video, and I could go back, right, and upload my round one recording as well. It's not just Egeon, the winner, who gets to upload a video. Everybody could upload their own view into what happened, right?
Cool.
And we'll close that, and because we're still in round two, and don't mind that the same people are in round two. Again, some of this data is mocked out here. But right now, it looks like Eden member 12 is voting for Egeon, and
very good.
Eden member 13 is voting for Eden member for themselves.
So it shows you who they're voting for, and then you can click. So whoever's wallet you're currently, they get to then. This was Egeon, I suppose, and you can pick.
Yeah,
right there.
yeah. And I'm signed in as Egeon, so I am Egeon. So looks like here. But guess what? If he decides to change his vote, Eden member 12. Actually, no, I'm Egeon, so I can only vote as Egeon here. So Egeon is now going to change his vote to Eden member 13. Watch this. Submit vote.
Boom.
Did you see it?
Lightning fast.
It's a leaderboard. It's a leaderboard.
Okay?
Yeah, it's a leaderboard. And so the idea is that this is polling behind the scenes, and you are seeing in real time, right, who's in the lead, and you're seeing the leaderboard for your round adjust. Now, we are also working on a consensometer. This is a technical term that I think we just made up.
Yeah, I love it.
Consensometer. It's a consensometer, another way to put it. But you know, you're sitting there always doing the math in your head. Okay, wait a second. So 2 plus 1. Wait, what are the rules again? You don't have to worry about that now. The consensometer is going to show you. Now, let me just pull up the XD if I have it here. These are our designs. So this is like how many people. Oh, look, you can see Thomas in there working. Where'd he go? He's in there working away. Oh, person's not available. I saw his mouse move. Anyway, four votes have come in here, right? And 2 votes have been cast for the person receiving the most votes so far. Actually, it doesn't quite line up with what we have mocked out here. There he is, Thomas. And 1 more vote for one of the people, and you hit consensus, and the consensometer turns green. So we're trying to do some things to make it friendly.
Super cool. And that'll update based on, say you had 5 people instead of 4 people. You get another box and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Very
so yeah, just come in here, change the votes, and upload our round 2 recording at any moment. And then request meeting link. Right now, this is more for our assistants. This UI isn't done, but you can see we have like modals coming into play here, and those modals are. Let's change that to responsive. It's all responsive, right? So
that's very cool. And if you don't vote, then this is again, it'll just at the end automatically do the math.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's that.
That's impressive.
Yeah, we do have some more design stuff that hopefully we can layer on in V02. We're going to be revamping the nav bar. We're going to have side nav and more of a hamburger, and getting a more kind of cohesive look and feel. We're starting to move towards the new design. We're kind of in that in-between stage though, where it's not quite there. So yeah, that's
before fashion is my motto.
That's really funny. I have something very similar, but yeah. All right, let me stop sharing. I'll share my last slide. Guiding principle. Just this is, if you've read Dan's book, Independence. Independence is a grand theme in there. We are working to deliver a user experience that's competitive with modern full stack applications while protecting and maximizing the independence of the Eden community. What this means in practice is, it's harder to build this way. It really is. You know, we could spin up a database and some WebSockets and have all this infrastructure and use all these third-party services, and this thing would already be purring along. But we are very deliberately protecting and maximizing the independence in all of our technical decisions. And that means that things do move at a more measured pace, but that's worth it to us.
Yeah.
You know, the idea is that anybody out there could take our GitHub repo and let me just put it, and pull it down, spin it up, and compete on the UI, and half the community could use that, and half the community could use this version of EdenOS, and it's all the same community. No permission needed from us, no special keys or secrets needed to set everything up just right. So that's what we're doing. Anyway, that is the 2-week update.
That's pretty awesome, Brandon. Yeah, that's great. And seeing that live like that, the ability to vote right there, and how it, that's cool. I'm looking forward to that. That's way better, because you could listen to the people from the last trial, and it's like, who's going to update that Google spreadsheet, and do I have access, and do I put it in Telegram? Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, that just clears up all of that ambiguity on just process. So very cool. And that'd be great. So we do, please, if I hope I get to be included in some of the test stuff, and we can do some screen captures and maybe put in a couple of videos to really inculcate the process, so people are well informed on how it works in advance of the real show. Absolutely. You got it. Right on. Well, that's been an hour. Any last questions in the chat? Toss them in. Otherwise, I think this has been a pretty beneficial conversation. Any parting words, Brandon? No, just thanks everybody for tuning in and listening, and more than that, thank you for being the community that we want to build. Like I said, if get out there, invite more people, find the people that you trust and who know would appreciate this. Buy copies of Dan's book, distribute it. Let's get this message far and wide. Remember, we start here and now. We start with trial elections manually. Then we go EdenOS on chain on EOS. And then we go change society, possibly. That's why we're here. So let's do it. One step at a time. Right on. Awesome. Great final words. Thanks a lot for your time, Brandon. Until 2 weeks from now. Take care, everybody. Bye.